Welcome to the Straight Up, No Bullshit, The Don Handston Show. Our hosts are going to push the limits, but create an environment where it's safe to uncover the crap that holds you back so you can survive the mediocrity of today's life. And they'll be admitting and revealing their own experiences so you can learn the skills and attitude you need to be who you are. No bullshit. Warning to all listeners: if you have thin skin and get offended easily by harsh, direct, or somewhat offensive content and language, then this podcast may be overwhelming. However, we believe pulling your blinders off and viewing things from a real perspective may feel invigorating and may be the very thing that may cause you to expand your capabilities exponentially. Now here's your hosts, Don and Marcus.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Straight Up No Bullshit, where we cut through the noise and get straight to the heart of the matter. Don, how's it going, my friend?
Everything's great.
Awesome. Every day above ground's a great day. That's our motto here at Straight Up No Bullshit. And we're here to bring you the facts. We're here to entertain you, cut through the noise. So let's just dive in and uncover the magic about magic mushrooms. And so today we have a fascinating topic to delve into, which is the magic of mushrooms. We have a very special guest with us here today, Brandon Ferguson. Now, Brandon, he's had a very unique journey in life. He's had started out life with a very tough childhood and constantly moving around, even being homeless at times. But that didn't break his spirit. You know, coming from humble beginnings, he spent the last 15 years in the world of sales and started with door-to-door selling and eventually diving into the realm of digital marketing, where I met Brandon, and we worked together in technology with websites and digital marketing, and we had a conversation one day, and we found it truly fascinating that Brandon's got a very unique perspective on life and how he actually uses magic mushrooms to aid himself and others on their personal journeys. And you heard it right, magic mushrooms. So today we're going to be exploring the benefits of, am I saying this right? I can never say it right. Psilocybin, right? Psilocybin.
Yes.
I'll get that done. The wonders of mycology and even deciphering the difference between psychedelics and non-psychedelics. So without any further ado, Brandon, welcome to the show, my friend.
Oh, thank you, Don. Thank you, Marcus. I really appreciate it. I definitely right off the bat, no scientist. I'm not a licensed mycologist by any means, but I'm somebody who's got a lot of recreational experience, but also just to get over a lot of things in personal lives. And I think it'll be relatable to a lot of your listeners.
I love it. So tell us about your background. I mean, you obviously had a rough childhood. You mentioned some things. Tell us, where things were, how things started, and how you progressed to where you are today, and how mushrooms helped you in that process.
Yeah, no. So I like I said earlier to you, I had a checkered childhood, growing up with a single mother, domestic abuse in the home. My mom was very verbally abusive, not as much physically, but the verbal abuse can also really stain and hold on for a really long period of time. That trauma really sticks to you when you're an adult, how you handle relationships, especially as a man with women, as a lot of us as men know, right? It's really tough dealing with our wives. And sometimes we think about those experiences we had with our mothers, right? So for me, I've always had like a lot of, tough resentment with her growing up. I thought she was overly mean, overly aggressive to me, and thought of me as a burden, but only because she didn't have enough money to be able to pay the bills or take care of certain things.
Right.
So that would mean that she would take that stuff out on me, right? And, I was born in British Columbia, Western Canada, for those of your American listeners. I grew up in Alberta, which is just a province over. Not sure how that move happened. I was very young. And then I ended up moving over to Ontario when I was 12, which is where I live now, Toronto, Canada. A lot of people know the Raptors, the Maple Leafs, the home of that city. And then moving here when I was 12, and it was out of, fleeing a domestic situation, which kind of required us to make a move. And we had an opportunity where, social services would pay for our move, and they transplanted us basically here. And we, our first experience was living in a shelter over here. And then we ended up getting a place, and then my mom ended up getting us back in a shelter. And then that cycle happened for, maybe 4 or 5 more years until I ended up becoming 17, 18. Now, me not being really prepared for this, not really going to school, I'm not taking things seriously because, I don't have a strong family foundation. I'm selling weed, I'm not skipping class, I'm doing all the wrong things, right? What a lot of people might be going through as teenagers or young adults or whatever it is, right? Wanting to give up on life. And then I get to this point where my mom wants to go to another shelter, but they don't take adult boys. these are women's shelters,
Wow.
right?
Right.
She has to go. So I'm forced to go to a male shelter, which if anyone has experienced that, I
Wow.
hope not. It's like a prison, but you can go outside.
Right.
You got bunk beds, you're sharing spaces with people. And then I end up bumping into a girl that I ended up meeting years prior. And not to belabor the whole length of the story, I skip over it, but I end up bumping into her
Okay.
when I'm 18 years old, still in the shelter. I bump into her on a bus, and I had a crush on her, and she knew that, and she liked me, and now she sees where I am now,
Right.
right? I'm in a different place in life, and she's like, hey, you want to hang out one time? And I end up meeting up with her, and I tell her everything. We end up dating. Long story short, we have a kid. We get married. I end up getting a job in sales.
Okay.
During the time when I meet her, when I was like 17 years old, and that's when I started the sales job with landscaping, and I started, branching out,
Okay.
and not just, being a drug dealer. And I was like, let's get a real job. So this is the only person who would hire me, no salary, door to door landscaping, lawn mowing, aerating, seeding lawns, and you got to sell it on the spot.
Right.
And I honed my skills there. You talk to a lot of people, especially door to door, knocking on doors.
Right.
You talk to people, and you start to learn experiences. You start to learn different people. Homeowners, how real people, civilized people act. Start making sales transactions, building rapport, and then becoming a better person. Then I find another digital marketing sales job. I say, hey, let me try to find an office job, right? And then all of a sudden I progress from there. Now, during that time of that progression of moving to an office job and getting a good job, right when my life starts to get good, because I got married so young, because I wasn't a true man yet, I didn't know who I was, I got divorced.
Yeah.
And then I have a son, we co-parent now, everything is great, but up to this point in my life, I was just making that transition to be like, to take my game to the next level,
Yeah.
as most people say. And that's also where I started taking mushrooms after I got my divorce, right? I was starting to contemplate things in my life and wondering, like, I got baptized, I got married, we did all the right things, and didn't have the kid first, we got married first.
Sure.
We rushed it, sure, but we wanted to do everything right by God, what everyone tells you to do, right? And all our families also saying, hey, you guys don't live together right away, make sure you get married first, all these things.
All those rules.
And it doesn't end up setting us up the right way, right? So I end up questioning. You don't question Christianity as a whole, but you question certain things.
Sure.
Certain things that you read, and I can't recall everything, but you think about certain things on a deep level. And I started taking mushrooms at that point, and I start kind of going through this trauma and dealing with the resentment I had with my mom, even the resentments I had with my ex-wife, and this is over the course of years, right? And now we're at a point now where we're actually good friends. We meet, we talk. I just saw her on the weekend. She kind of wants to get back together now after all these years. But she sees I have a different perspective. I'm a more mature person.
Sure.
I have a better understanding of my emotions, and it was able to reel me in. And that's kind of where my journey has led me to. And now I work at this marketing company, which allowed me to cross paths with you, Marcus.
Right.
Talking about digital marketing and other business related matters, but yeah, that's just kind of for me. Like now mushrooms are an everyday, or not every day, like a part of my lifestyle. I apologize.
Okay.
Some people microdose and do it daily. For me, I think macro dosing, which is where you take a larger amount, is more beneficial. Those things stay with you longer, and you have a more impactful experience when you do it. So I space out those trips, but I definitely do it once a month now. Like now it's something that I keep going back to. I like pondering other things too. It's not always just about getting over myself now. Now it's just thinking about things or listening to music and letting certain things come to you that may not have come to you when you were in a sober mind.
Interesting.
So what's interesting about what you're saying, Brandon, is it sounds to me like you use the psychedelics to kind of bring yourself back to your natural thought, right? And I talk about this all the time, your theta, your thought, what you know, what you know, but you're not aware of. And you're trying to bring yourself to that awareness. And I also listen to you talk about you tried to do the things that other people told you should do for life. And it kind of goes back to something that I've been talking about for years. I'm like a broken record over here. And that is, you get out your pen, get out your paper, You write your rules, you write your path, you follow your path, and you create your own way. And I always say, if you follow somebody else's path, or a path that's been written for you to follow, okay, it's not going to be your path. It's not going to be it's going to be somebody else's path. So you have to create your own. And it sounds to me like when you do these psychedelics, like I'm one of those guys. I don't need anything to alter my mind, because
Stimulant there.
yeah, because my mind is completely, I don't know, different than everybody else. Most people say I'm crazy, and I'll say, you know what, I agree with you. I'm crazy. I don't really care, because if everyone else isn't crazy and I'm crazy, then I want to be crazy. So, but it really is about your thought and the things that you know. And if you're doing these psychedelics, and I don't know anything about this stuff, but if you're doing these psychedelics and it's bringing you back to where you're getting back to your original thought, right? The things that you actually know, the things that can bring you peace, the things that can bring you happiness, then I think is it doing any of that stuff for you, or is it just me speculating?
No, you're absolutely on the right track. Like, someone doesn't return to the well of, maybe sometimes with harsher drugs out there, but I wouldn't return to the well if I wasn't finding reason to do so.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can't always be described, right? Sometimes it's something that's just within you, and it's like says in the name, magic mushrooms. This predates, this goes back to like the beginning of time, mushrooms and mycology itself. And like I said, I'm not a mycologist, and there's plenty of great recommendations I can make out there. Michael Pollard, sorry, he's an author who wrote a book called How to Change Your Mind. So again, your listeners out there, if they're brand new to the subject, he's a PhD, he's a psychologist, someone talking about it. There's also a really great documentary called Fantastic Fungi, which he's also involved in. It's on Netflix. And it talks about how far back these mushrooms go and how much it may have influenced what we know today in what I was talking about with Marcus just pre-show, like even with religion. Some people say a lot of psychedelics have influenced what certain cultures think a certain religion may be. Moses with the burning bush could have potentially been, a certain type of psychedelic that allowed him to see a hallucination. And then, of course, at that time, he writes it down. And then years later, centuries later, it becomes the word of God. Now, that's not fact or fiction. I don't know. But it's something that people speculate about. When you think about all of the different consistencies between religions, or at least most religions, like especially with Muslim, Prophet Muhammad, then you've got Jesus over here, and a lot of them, they had prophets,
Buddha,
and people following
Krishna.
them, or disciples. Sorry. Right, so like there's a lot of commonalities there, and sure, we have a different flavor on things from different parts of the world and call it different stuff, but I think it definitely all comes back to the same thing. And spirituality is just deeply connected with mushrooms. And if you want to be a spiritual person and you want to unravel the onion that we all are, because a lot of times it's our subconscious, there's a lot of things that are deep in there, and that's what PTSD is and these different traumas that we bury. And a lot of times you just want to leave it there. You leave it under the rug. But psychedelics brings that out of you. And it's also spiritual, like I said, with religion, but also with the anxiety and depression that we have in the modern time, being able to understand yourself and why things bother you. Being able to take mushrooms or, opening yourself up to the experience. I think everyone should at least try it once, regardless if you think you're crazy or whatever, Don. I think it'll do something to you, and it'll give you a lens that you've never seen before. And whether you want to return to that, there are some people who do it once and they have the most magical epiphanies, and they're like, wow, I can live with this the rest of my life and I don't need to go back to it. But there are a lot of people who like to do it medicinally, recreationally. Some people microdose, right? They do it during the day and it enhances their creativity. Just simple creativity. You're doing such a small amount that you don't actually get an effect of psychedelic hallucination. You're able to still go about your day, do it normally, but you may see or sense, better creativity, maybe better language skills, being able to construct sentences better, all these different things, and just come at things more creative. And also with more compassion. I find when I'm on mushrooms, I'm more empathetic. I want to hug my friends. I love things, and I just remember all the things that are good in my life. Because sometimes when you get down and things hard, that can bring you back too.
Right. A lot of times, Go ahead, Marcus.
No, it's interesting. You said everyone should try it once, because I remember I just did a Turntable Tuesday today about the Grateful Dead. A friend of mine requested it, and so
Oh.
we went to the Dead show. It was the summer of '88, I believe it was. It was so hot, but a
Oh,
lot of my friends, we were there for 3 days, camped out, and a lot of them were
right.
tripping on acid. Now I know acid's different
Of
than
course.
mushrooms, but for me, it was I had an apprehension.
Actually, not so
Really
much. Not so much.
interesting,
They're actually derived. They actually hit the same serotonin. You could pull it up if you want to screen share, and you can just say what's the combination. Now they are different, yes, but it is pretty much mushrooms, just on a little bit of a higher level, and it's a little bit more solid. Like you'll be high for longer,
right?
and the visuals might be stronger, but it is based in psilocybin. Actually, it's usually like a liquid version of
Really?
that.
Okay. For some reason, I thought it was a chemical, but it's interesting because the reason I had hesitation, because we used to drink a lot, smoke pot, even smoke hash,
Right.
whatever. But I'm like, you know what? If I lose my mind, I have to rely on this. This is all I only got. I only got one, right? So
You're
I
thinking that it'll disappear.
exactly,
It's the
yeah,
stigma.
or something,
Right.
and so I've never done it. But you're saying that obviously that there's a whole other side to this that really can really benefit people in a big way.
I think at the end of the day, it's the stigma that you're talking about because it goes back to the government making it a what's the classification for
Oh,
cocaine or
class for
whatever.
narcotic, yeah.
Uh, right, because I'm in Canada, so but they've made it that, right? It's in the same
Right.
level, right? But it's not even close. It's not addictive. You can actually pull up a chart right now if you say are psilocybin mushrooms addictive?
Okay.
Look it up right now.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like 1%. It's like the lowest on the scale. Alcohol is like the highest,
right.
and then you've got like other drugs like tobacco and all that other stuff. So lowest on the harm scale in terms of addiction rates, right? And also in terms of what it does to you physically, it does. There's no evidence that you could ever die from a mushroom trip, and there's also no evidence that anyone's like really lost their mind. There might be like one sensationalized case of a guy jumping off a bridge,
Right.
if I remember
Yeah.
correctly. But that's one out of like the millions of people who've done it, right? And what kind of situation was that guy in beforehand? I'm not recommending that you do mushrooms if you're on the brink, okay? You should seek therapy, you should seek help.
Right.
But it's interesting to know that Johns Hopkins University is trying to incorporate it within these clinical trials for post-traumatic stress disorder and with
Wow.
war veterans and with cancer patients who are struggling with the fear of death because now you have a timer,
Right.
when you're going to die, or at least a rough estimate, right? So what you're doing is now you're sitting here thinking, okay, how do I grapple with death, right? And it's tough, right? So it's not just, maybe someone like me, like in my early life, but it's also for people at the end of life. Maybe you've never done it and you're on your deathbed, stage 4, like, they're encouraging that. And there's a lot of people who've reported, and you'll see in that documentary, Fantastic
I'm gonna check
Fungi,
it out.
they
Yeah.
interview these people and they say, I've been able to be more comfortable and with the idea of death, and because they know it's happening. And for all of us, we should be too,
Right.
And I'm wearing a Pink Floyd shirt. And if you're
I
familiar with
noticed
some
that.
Love
lyrics
Pink
from,
Floyd.
and if you're familiar with some lyrics from Great Gig in the Sky, one of the only lyrics in the song, he's like, I'm never afraid of dying. Why should you be? You got to go sometime.
Right.
Right. And it's true. We're all going to go. Right. And I think that's helped me grapple with mortality at such a young age. So, like, when I'm old, hopefully I'm already over that hump
Right.
and I'm able to just go easily. And hopefully it's not sudden out of nowhere.
Right.
But, yeah.
Every day above ground's a good day, right? We're all on
Absolutely.
borrowed time.
Oh, and that's absolutely
We
true.
don't know when
That's
we're going to
absolutely
go.
true.
We don't know what's going to take us. But getting to a couple of things that you had mentioned. Number one, you talked about the layers of the onion. I talk about that all the time. Now, when what happens is a lot of those bad memories, okay, we keep them hidden and we keep them in a place where we don't want to be aware of those bad memories because we're afraid it's going to take us to a bad place. By opening up the onion, which it sounds like the psychedelics is doing, okay, you're unveiling some of those bad thoughts, and once you bring those out and you recognize what some of those bad memories are, a lot of times what you do is it's like fly away butterfly, and you get rid of them, because once you pay notice to some of those memories that you're afraid of and you're aware of them, it brings you to present time, okay? that brings you to present time.
First step is just being aware.
Right.
Because a lot of people aren't aware that they're bearing.
Exactly. But it's inside. So if you, whatever way you can do to unveil that and let some of these things and be aware of these things that you've been hiding from on a subconscious level, that's actually how people become more sane. Now, and then on another note, you had mentioned about like how the government, you know, classes it. I don't know, the felony charge on it, or it's you know,
yeah, like you're not allowed to sell
Yeah.
it now. People can't do clinical trials legally. Only Johns Hopkins can in a very small, controlled environment. But it should be like available to all over. But go on. Sorry.
Absolutely. Yeah. So like I did a lot of study on. And I'm an anti-drug person. I don't do any drugs. I don't need them. I'm all over the board anyways. But with like pot, I call it pot, right? Marijuana, right? It's in the same. It has the same relevance. It's a little bit different, but there's so many medicinal properties.
Right.
Yet it keeps, you know, basically who owns the United States is pharmaceuticals, right? So the pharmaceuticals don't want these natural therapies that can help people, cancer patients, glaucoma patients, whatever psychedelics helps, you know, maybe like you said, PTSD, whatever it may be, because that's going to eat into,
the depression pills they want to give you,
the pharmaceutical,
or the opiates they want to give you,
which is poison, right? They want the poison. They want to sell you the poison. Right. And then the poison feeds the hospitals and the doctors and so on and so forth. I don't want to get off of my soapbox, but these more natural things, like you said, this is actual fungi, right? A mushroom is something that grows.
I wouldn't even classify it drugs.
Right.
Yeah, no, I would call it's
natural.
And I think the same thing with like a marijuana. All right, it's really not a drug. Okay.
Well, the only reason it was classified that way is because the government.
It's suppression.
It's suppression. They were worried about the paper mills and the cotton industry and all these industries going out of business because hemp, which is a cousin of marijuana, was basically made illegal forever, and that you can make anything out of. There was I think was it maybe it was.
But now they want to use plastics and rubbers and all that.
I think Ford made an entire car out of hemp. Someone told me that. I was like, oh my god, it's crazy. But yeah, those are the things that do that.
Well, you know what? One thing I want to bring it back to, guys, is not only that. That's not the only reason. Those are really good reasons why the government doesn't want people using psychedelics, but I like to use the analogy of the Matrix. I don't dive too deep into like, oh, is it a simulation? Is there a guy behind the code? I think the Matrix is a lot more subversive within our everyday life. It's just what the government does in the media and or what the media is doing, what they report on. I think that's more of the Matrix. What version of life do you believe? Right. But that's also another reason why they don't want you doing these types of things, because it opens you up. It allows you to see through the bullshit, which is what this show's about. Which is why I think everyone should try it, regardless of your state of mind. And like I said, I don't classify it as a drug. I would classify it as therapeutic, a herbal, It is a mold, technically. It is a fungi, like you said. That is the technical term. And weed to this point is maybe getting close to a drug because of what we're doing to it. We're punching a bunch of stuff in it. Right. We're making it more potent. We're going out of our way. But with a lot of mushrooms out there, and with the website I shared with you and Marcus, if you want to key to it anytime, but it has a lot of cool species on there, and it shows you the different versions. And they're just cross-pollinating different fungi and stuff. And there's not much more you can do to, bring out potency with these things. You do have to find the spores, and if you can get your hands on those, then you can get the one you want. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think a lot of people, it's like taking the red pill. And Morpheus is, here you go. Now, whether or not it's for the greater vision of the world or just what's in yourself, are you living within your own matrix, right? Are you just an echo chamber? Do you not have original thought? A lot of people don't even know what music they want to listen to. They're just listening to the top 40. They're just listening to pop music and rap. Me, obviously, with the shirt I'm wearing. I know what I want to listen to. I listen to progressive rock. I like thinking about, I like contemplating life and existential stuff. And sometimes that's too much for people all the time. You got to switch things up and, you don't have to go balls deep like me. But it works for myself. And once you take a look at this realm and look through the lens of what mushrooms gives you, you'll decide whether or not it's something you want to pursue. But it would be at least one experience you said you had in life that really wasn't going to have any long-term trauma. You're not going to lose your brain, You may have a few days of fogginess, just trying to bring yourself back to life, but especially if it's your first
Yeah.
time. But after that, everything becomes so clear. And over the course of weeks and months, you start to integrate what you learned, and you start to become a better, different person.
Well, what's interesting, and this is going to sound like it has nothing to do with what you're talking about, but it does. Um, I've been listening to a lot of lectures lately, and one of the lectures, and I completely agree with this, is we live in a physical universe, okay? And the physical universe is made of mess. It's mass, okay, energy, space, and time.
Matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're the physical universe, but really, okay, we can live in the physical universe, but we have our own universe, and it's kind of like what you're talking about, like when you're off and you see exactly what it is that you want.
You lift the veil.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're living in your own terms and your own ideas and your own realities, okay? And what's interesting about that is reality, okay, is nothing more than agreement, okay? When everyone agrees upon something, okay, that's reality. So if you disagree with what other people, with the masses of what they think, then you are outside.
Our crazy person.
Right, you're outside
whatever.
of their reality, right? So you're crazy. But I think realistically, the further away you are, like you had mentioned, the media, right? The media pretty much pushes how people think about everything. And I think if, just like I talked about turning off the television, take it, throw it in the street, right? It doesn't do any service. But you're getting into your own reality when you start getting into your own thoughts. And where I'm going with this is, it sounds like when you're doing your psychedelics, okay, it sounds like you're getting into your own reality. You're seeing things clearer because it's your universe, it's your rules, it's your ideas, it's your thought. Okay, it's not everybody else's thoughts that's pushed upon you that they agree on and you disagree with. So I think that it's relevant to this.
It's exactly what I was saying about the Matrix.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing. It's another way of putting it. I like the analogy because a lot of people have seen the movie.
Right.
A lot of people use red pill, blue pill, but that's exactly what it is, 100%.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because there is, I do believe there's a lot of people that are going through the world, and they're hypnotized, they're in a trance, and they might as well just be in a pod, being sucked off like in the Matrix, versus those of us that are awakened. We're
eating the
seeing
steak
truth.
like the Merovingian. Remember the guy who's talking to the agent? He's like, "You want to give up Neo?" He's like, "Well, I want to stay in the Matrix. I just want to be rich and famous, and I want all these things that I see." And that's you jogged my memory on what my point is. Now I'm not as easily manipulated.
Right.
I want to be on the Nebuchadnezzar.
Yes.
I want to live in the real world.
Exactly.
I don't want to just feel like I don't watch the news. Like, I watch a lot of TV, sure. I watch shows and stuff, but I'm not watching the garbage that most people are watching. Like, I watch thoughtful shows and good dramas, and there's a few of those still out there. But most of the other crap that's being fed to us, and there's a subversion there that's happening, a subtext that's happening, even in the kids' cartoons. You're watching a cartoon with your kid, and you're like, "What the hell are these talking about?" It's just like that famous joke from Dave Chappelle. Pepe Le Pew is basically trying to have sex with every cat he saw, right? Is that good? I don't know, but it's all in the media, and not just the news, right? It's in
commercials, the TV shows, the media, you name it.
Absolutely.
It's all over the place, and it's all trying to get people to think a certain way and believe certain things and agree upon certain things. The more you agree, okay, the more you're hypnotized. It's all about agreement. I agree with this. I agree with 14 different stations told me the same thing, and you know what? I agree with that. But if you don't watch those 14 different stations, and maybe you do, stuff that I do for therapy or your psychedelics, you don't agree with that, so you're going to be different than everybody else. But again, it goes along with the theory. If you want differently, you have to do differently. If you do the same as everybody else, you get the same as everybody else. And it's really that simple.
It is simple. And it's funny you say agreements, and because that's really what it is. Even to some of the things that we believe is for granted, like, the the government is there to support us, and birth
I don't
certificates.
believe that.
Pave our streets
we're
and do the garbage
exactly.
and all the civil stuff that makes a city.
There's so much stuff that we agree upon. We don't even realize we agreed upon, but because we signed a birth certificate, or we signed that SSS card number, or we agreed to something, this or that. It's all in the fine text, and the words and the lies that are told and the way we're manipulated. It is really about waking up and not being manipulated anymore. I love the way you said that, Brandon, because that is so true. I think straight up no bullshit. In a lot of the perspectives that we want to share and coming at from different angles. We've talked to pastors, we've talked to spiritual healers, we've talked to people now with magic mushrooms. We're talking just so that people can ponder different perspectives and get different ideas, so that they can start thinking for themselves and pull themselves out of the matrix, pull themselves out of all of the manipulations and the lies out there, so that people can live life on their terms, whatever their terms are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you get to choose, like you said, every day I wake up and I choose what my life's going to be like. And you know what? I do it consciously versus being sleepwalking and being unconscious throughout the day.
And this goes back to what Don was saying too, and what you're saying right now. And when you were talking about that seminar you saw, or that video you were watching, Don, but basically we're all matter. At the end of the day, on a quantum level, we're all just physical matter. And this goes back to the music you listen to, the TV shows that you watch, and the media you consume, because it's all about the frequencies and the vibrations. So if you surround yourself, like for me, like just to kind of go back a little bit to my personal story, I grew up listening to rap music. Obviously, with the story I told, it would be pretty common to think about listen to this similar type of music. And it makes sense that my life was also being guided in I wanted to elevate and get different drugs and sell other things and do all this other crap, right, that everyone else is doing that gets everyone killed in the movies, right? Now, I was no big guy. I wasn't making a lot of money. I was just I need to make more. So that's what people do, right? They step up to other drugs, right? And it's the frequencies and vibrations of the music I was listening to. And then I realized one day that I actually had a crazy experience. I mean, everyone here has heard of the album Dark Side of the Moon, right? Pink Floyd, right? Like the most top-selling album of all time, right? And I remember I was on mushrooms one time, going through my journeys, and I didn't know what to listen to either on mushrooms. I was just kind of doing whatever, and I had this recommendation. He's like, you should try listening to this. And I was alone by myself with my headphones in, and I was already in the mushroom trip, and I was having a crazy experience, laying on the bed, just thinking thoughts. And I put on the album for the first time. Never listened to it sober, which is pretty crazy. And if you've heard the album, and I'm sure you have, it's a pretty magical experience. And imagine hearing it for the first time, coming from rap music, and then listening to this, and I was like, wow. And that honestly was a big part of bringing me back to the mushrooms too. I'm like, I want to recreate that experience. But then through that magical chemistry that happened, and same thing with Grateful Dead. You were talking about Grateful Dead earlier, or with Radiohead, or with any of these other psychedelic bands, or Supertramp. Rush is a great one. Progressive,
Moody Blues, right?
All these bands. Everyone may have a certain band they like. It's not Pink Floyd the best to me, maybe, but I had this weird experience, and these frequencies and vibrations of the music, which is my point from earlier, was able to change the person that I am. And now I'm a better, more compassionate person. And also what the music is talking about has meaning, right? So if you're going to listen to media, any type of media, whether it be music, podcasts, or, oh, wow, that air conditioner, big difference. Music, podcasts, movies, television shows, or even the news you consume, right? That's why there's platforms like Rumble, which is what we're on right now, right? So then you got to surround yourself with those things, and you got to break out of the echo chamber or the matrix. And sometimes you don't realize you're in that matrix. And that's why I was bringing you up mushrooms. It allows you to break through. And I'm like, wow, I used to think rock music was bullshit. Literally, I was like, who cares? Guitars? Give me rap music, right? I didn't even want to listen. So you do have to be at a period in your life where you're ready for it. You can't just be like, oh, take him, I'm going to be different. You still have to be ready and wanting and willing. But, it allows you to open those things up.
And music does, I don't want to change the subject on us, but you had mentioned music, and music definitely is integral as far as your thinking. Like
Absolutely.
I was very confrontational person, I should say. And right now, I'm in a state of peace. I'm a very peaceful guy. Okay, like last thing I want to do is create problems with people. I just like peaceful. But I listen. What do I listen to? I sit in my pool. I listen to reggae music. Okay, it's
Yep.
peaceful. It's got good message. It's got good vibration. I mean,
Good frequency. Yeah.
exactly right. And the same thing with the people that you surround yourself with, right? The people that you
That
surround
too.
yourself with now, you wouldn't even think twice about having any of those people that was in your life in the past now, because you're in a good spot, because you're in a good place,
Hmm.
Yep.
right? Am I accurate with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we're talking the same language. Whether you're listening to reggae and that's a good
Yeah,
vibration, a good
yeah,
frequency, it's not talking about killing and drugs
right,
and like most of what the bullcrap rap music
right,
Oh
is,
yeah.
right?
right.
And all the beefing and the drama and getting caught up in what the music industry wants to sell more records, which is a lot harder to do nowadays that the streaming revolution is
Right.
here. They're just trying to like I'm listening to the music that was released 50 years
Me
ago.
too.
The record
Yep.
labels don't care about that. You know,
No.
I mean, maybe a little bit. The royalties are so small now. They want you to listen to the new stuff they're investing in right now, that
Right.
they're putting money into these new artists to make the next generation because they know that people aren't listening to this classic stuff and they're not going to promote it either. And you know, maybe it's the 70s for me and maybe it's the 90s for someone else or whatever that
Yep.
generation is. But you know, the music they're putting out now is not the right
It's
vibration.
not.
You know, and there was a study done about those 808 beats. I'm sure you've heard of 808s or like you know what Kanye West does and stuff. And they were saying that something to do with a lot of people that listen to that music be more aggressive. And I was actually going to ask you, Don, can you put a correlation between the music you were listening to when you were more confrontational, more aggressive, to what you're listening to now? Was there a difference in the tone of music?
Absolutely, absolutely. We would listen to some heavy metal. Okay, back in the day, or heavy metal,
Yeah,
some of the super hard rock. I mean, you just get pumped up, and I mean, your mind is just going like,
right.
"Holy shit!" You know, I got a bad car.
Yeah,
Death
I'm
metal.
bad. You know, this, that, and another. But now it's
that's
like,
my
yeah,
point.
exactly. So it's got a lot to do with vibration, right? It does, and it's got to do with your environment. I always talk
Yep.
about controlling your environment, whether
Yep.
it's the people, right? The levels of the people that are around you. But I always say, it could be sound, it doesn't matter what it is. But like, in my opinion, I think that if when people thirst for betterment, they want to get better in any way, shape, or form, mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever way, if they're thirsting for betterment and they're trying to get better every day, doesn't matter what they're doing. If psychedelics is the thing that helps you, you're searching to get better. If you're around other people that are searching to get better, maybe they're not searching in the same way you're searching, but they're searching. And those are the people that you want in your environment for you to get better.
Yep.
Okay. Because on a daily basis, we can all get better, and we can get better by helping other people, and we can get better by inspiring thought with other people, and we can get better by helping other people get better so they can help you get better. If that makes
Yep.
sense. I know it sounds a little,
No, no, it makes perfect
Yeah.
sense. At the end of the day, it's all about the frequencies, the vibrations, the willingness, and the wanting. Because you wouldn't believe it. Once you give up, sure, you hit rock bottom, but that's probably the best time to pick yourself back up.
Yep.
But there are the people that take the extra step and just continue to spiral and go down. Maybe become a drug addict. Maybe you know do the other unalive thing. You know, there's lots of other ways to just continue to not want to do stuff or just sit around live off welfare and
Yeah.
not want to get a job. Like people just, you know, they think it's too late for themselves. It's never too late, right? You see plenty of stories out there, but you have to want it. And you know, like I said, it's not going to be psychedelics that makes you want it and become a better person, right? Somebody could change their life, and plenty people do without ever having a psychedelic
Right.
experience. But what I do think is that there are a lot of commonalities with a lot of the stories that have been told and a lot of the research that has been done in a limited scope, and also just from my own personal experience and
Right.
the people that I've done it with and the people I've shown it to and guided through their first experiences. And I've seen them be able to see that new light, and they were willing, they were wanting to take those next steps. And then when you get confronted with what the mushrooms show you and you peel the onion back, you're not as scared. Because a lot of people, what holds them back from doing mushrooms is a bad trip,
Right.
right? You've heard of a
Yeah.
bad trip. but that probably just means you got a lot of demons that you're scared of and you're not ready to confront them yet. And you got to make sure you're like, okay, I know there's a lot I want to deal with, and you should go in with an intention. And if you do share that website, Marcus,
I
there's
will.
actually a great blog
Yep.
on that page talking about how to prepare your first trip. Setting, which is where you're going to be, your intentions, and also the people who are around you, right? So it's not just a willy-nilly thing, right? You want to go into it in a comfortable space and also think about the things that you want to overcome. Some people have quit smoking, quit alcoholism, like help them stop drinking
Yep.
by going in with that intention. And then they're able to overcome. If you go in with no intention, don't be surprised you get nothing.
Well, you've been
from
lost.
it,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, the intention is everything, because if you go to an experience, okay, let's say you're going into a meeting and you go into that meeting and your intention is this is a waste of time. It's going to be a waste of time. If you go into that meeting and you say this could be a highly productive meeting, that's going to be a highly productive
meeting. Or I'm
going
to close this deal.
Or whatever it is. You are the controller. You got the remote control. You just got to be the one with the positive. You got to have the positive thoughts if you want to gain something that you want out of that experience. So you're absolutely right. The intention is everything.
It is. And I'm going to bring us full circle here because, garbage in, garbage out. Thoughts become things. And yes, we're spiritual, we're matter and we have frequency, but I really believe it, take it one step further, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So that energy, that vibration, and maybe even being able to cross a barrier or to open up your mind to be able to tap into our true nature, where we are, that we don't normally get to, because as physical matter, as we know in quantum physics, nothing is solid. It's all vibrating at a certain frequency.
Everything's always moving.
It seems solid, but that's just because it's vibrating at a very slow frequency.
Even this table, it looks solid, but no, it's
exactly.
not. Mm-hmm.
So to be able to open, that maybe the psychedelics open up the mind and allow you to experience things in a way that you couldn't normally because of the vibration of where you're at that particular moment. So you mentioned about wanting to, if you're going to do this, maybe obviously do a little research into it, but also not do it by yourself. Like you've actually you mentioned you helped some people do that. So can you talk a little bit about that? So how does that work?
Absolutely.
What does that look like?
Well, as a lot of people say, and from the experiences that I've done, you can go in it alone. I never did it alone my first time, and the first time I did it was when I was actually a lot younger, and I did it just with some friends. It was supposed to just be a fun thing, right? I didn't know what I was going to expect. But yes, I always recommend that if you're an adult, you're at a certain time in your life where you're not just a kid and you're willing to try anything and your buddies are like, let's go do it. Then I do think it is encouraged to do it with somebody who's been there before, who can empathize with the feelings that you're going to be going through for the very first time that you've never felt before. Talking about how everything is matter, you're talking about everything can move and everything's moving. When you're on mushrooms, everything has a little bit of a wave. It almost looks like you can see the frequencies of your table.
That's pretty cool.
Of whatever you're looking at, right? And it might be a bit overwhelming for some people. And to be able to be sitting beside somebody who can ground you in that experience and know that, hey, you're not gonna like lose yourself here.
Right.
I've done it before, pre-talk. Now, if you're like, hey, I've read enough or I know and I'm confident, I'm comfortable, go into that experience alone. You can. But I have helped some people go through it, and I have one kind of good experience that I'll talk about with a friend who is delaying a lot of inevitables in his life. Living at home with his parents still. He drives a Mercedes. He lives with his mom, in a very small apartment. Like he makes good money. He doesn't want to move out. He doesn't have a girlfriend. He's scared to take those next steps. Right. He's very reserved and introverted. Right. And he's very hard socially. Makes good money. He's good at what he does, but he's very intro, right? He's 35, 36. And he's like, I want to do this experience. I hear you do it all the time. You always tell me. And he's always been scared because of the stigma. Right. Because of the stigma. And then he did it. And while we were doing it, and he was always so scared to do it. And then when he did it, he just did it normally. I'm like, oh, wow, you're prepared. He was like, he brought himself to terms that he was going to do this thing. And then when he did it, he's like, wow. He just kept saying, wow, over and over again. I can't see his thoughts or hear everything that he was saying, but he's having a lot of these epiphanies. He's like, wow. And then at one moment he looked at me and he said, do I have to apologize to myself? Like my old self? And it was a very wow moment for me too. I was like, wow, if you feel like you need to do that and let go of that old you, then do it. And it was on his first time, and that was his response, one of many, through the experience. And also at a few moments, he was like, "Whoa, man, you look normal." I was like, "Well, I've done it many times." Right. And for the record, for listeners out there, I've probably done psychedelic mushrooms maybe 100 to 150 times.
Wow. Okay.
In that range, of separate experiences, right? A lot of times with friends, a lot of times alone. But yeah, I was able to, bring him through it, and he was able to feel secure, safe, grounded, not spiral in those thoughts, because you may have a bad experience alone and then dismiss mushrooms altogether, right, because you weren't prepared for it. But, it goes both ways, right? You can have an excellent experience and then, hold it up on a pedestal, right? You do have to be prepared. And I think going in with someone who can keep you grounded and at an even keel, right, through the ups and downs of what we call the come up, which is right when you eat them, you start to kind of feel tingles. Then you hit the peak, which is where you're at the top level of your trip, as you'll call it, or your experience. And then you have a come down where you start to come back to normal, and you're like, "Oh wow, my thoughts are starting to return to regular. I'm starting to feel normal again." Right. And then it finally wears off, and then you get a 3-day kind of afterglow that we like to call it, where you kind of feel like, "Oh wow, I feel kind of warm and fuzzy," and you get this weird kind of good feeling. And a lot of times when I go into work, if I do it the next day I'm at work, my conversations are flowing nicer, and I'm on point for some reason, because it also opens up a lot of the synapses in the brain. There's a very early study. It's just interesting that they're doing it with Alzheimer's. Right. Maybe it can reopen some of those pathways that weren't there before, right, because it automatically starts making them fire. So, it might help, might not, but it's something that they're exploring, right? But yeah,
it's worth exploring.
There's a reason to have a guided experience, and there's a reason where you may feel like you don't need it. But I think it's encouraged, and there's a lot of benefits that I already stated, so I won't repeat myself.
Gotcha. That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, okay. No. Like I said right from the beginning, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a mycologist. Okay. I'm not even a therapist. I'm speaking from personal experiences and the few friends that have trusted in me and that I've known for a long time to be able to do this. I don't sell mushrooms. I buy just from a website.
Yeah, and we'll put that website in the show notes, and we'll do a screenshot and I'll put it up on the screen here, and people can check it out. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Well, Brendon, thank you so much. This has been a phenomenal conversation.
Yeah, awesome.
And I think you've enlightened a lot of people and really shared, from your heart, your experience that might actually help other people have an amazing experience as well. So, and who knows, maybe I'll try it.
If you're on the fence about it,
exactly. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much. And
just make sure you're in a good state of mind, don't be at the brink of it all.
Exactly.
Go into it with the right intention, right?
Exactly.
Right intention, right setting. Before you end the show, that's important to say, and if you know someone who's done it, who can guide you through, and obviously finding a trusted source.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, thank you for those last wine words. I was going to ask you any last words, and you beat me to the punch. So that's great. I appreciate that.
To save all the licensing and the monetization and all that stuff. The YouTube overlords.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Tell me about it. Well, thank you so much. And folks, if you liked what you heard here today, please subscribe to our channel. That's our currency. Tell people about it. Share a link to the podcast, whether you're listening to it on Spotify, Pandora, whether you're watching it on YouTube or Rumble or X. Tell some people about it. Tell people about it and like us. And if you want to leave us a 5-star review or leave us a review, we'd love that as well. So we appreciate it. Until next time, we'll see you on Straight Up No Bullshit. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to the Straight Up No Bullshit, the Don Handston Show. We hope we enlightened you and expanded your perspectives with our bold and honest discussions about what might be holding you back from being your genuine self. And with a simple click to subscribe, we'll invite you back to the next episode. If you want to know more, go to straightupnobullshit.com. We'll see you next time.